Hello, hello. It's Big Cheds. I'm back with another episode, another chapter of my battles with cancer, a patient and caregiver's candid memoir. This is my story. I'm a cancer survivor, and I was a caregiver for my mom when she was diagnosed with cancer. I published this book in 2020, and I republished it last year, updating it. And I have just recently released the Audible version, the book on tape, but I want it to be for free. That's why I'm doing this here on YouTube at Cheds Trading. You get the entire book for free, one chapter at a time. Of course, I've also published Trading Wisdom, and I've published Trading Quotes previously. And of course, I'm Big Cheds on Twitter. Last time we talked, we're up at part 2 now. Last time we did start the healing process, going to see my mom in the hospital after we found out about her tumor. And now we're doing taking care of mom. So let's get this going. So, taking care of mom. The following day, mom was having surgery, so I took advantage of the free time and I did some errands that I'd let fall by the wayside when mom first became ill. A good friend of mine had the day off as well, so after finishing my errands, we went to a local fishing hole and we relaxed for a while. It was nice to reconnect with nature. That was the prescription I'd given for myself, reconnecting with nature. And that was how I was going to recover from the chemotherapy and radiation sessions that I had to endure. Now that mom was sick, all my plans for the summer were up in the air. And I knew that balancing my need for nature with caring for mom was going to be a challenge. When mom came out of surgery, my sister was there to be with her, and she remarked how mom was again making jokes with the hospital staff. When we asked her about this later, she said that she could not remember anything because she was still coming out of surgery, but more than one nurse confirmed the story. And this just goes to show that mom's natural inclination is to roll with the punches, and that she does a great job of leaning on her sense of humor in tough times. Since mom needed time to recover from the surgery, I took the weekend to relax and to be with my wife and daughter. And once Monday rolled around, it had been a full 3 days since I'd seen mom, and I really felt out of the loop. When I called her to catch up, she told me that she would need one more day of rest before she could come home. And I assured her that everything was ready for her back at my place. We set up the extra bedroom in my house for her to stay as long as she needed, and we were all looking forward to having her there. The bed she would sleep in would be the same one that I used to recover from both my ACL surgery and my chemotherapy treatments. I really enjoyed the idea of mom recovering in the same place. We've always been so close, and if it was good enough for me, it ought to be good enough for her, I said to myself. After arriving at the hospital, I proudly climbed all the flights of stairs to see mom, and when I got there, she was laying back in her hospital bed, seemingly in good spirits. Greeting her with a smile, I sat down and I started to relax. There was some paperwork to fill out, as well as visits from the doctors and nurses before they could finally release mom. Watching her for a little while, I noticed that she was unable to move without experiencing pain, and I asked her why. And she explained that in order to remove the tumor, they had to cut through her abdomen, and then she showed me a large scar all the way across her belly. She remarked that she had essentially no core strength, and it was really hard for her to move her body at all. In fact, she could not even sit up without help from others. And after seeing her scar, I understood why. 30 minutes or so later, a pair of orderlies appeared with a wheelchair to escort mom downstairs. And with great effort and incredible patience, they were able to get her out of the bed and into the wheelchair. And once she had settled in, I went ahead and grabbed my car. As the orderlies wheeled mom through the front door of the hospital and towards my car, I realized just how big a moment this was. Mom had been in the hospital for 8 days straight, and only now was she strong enough to leave. Knowing that she was fit to be discharged and could finally spend some quality time with us while she recovered was a wonderful thing. I got out of the car and I went over to the passenger side to help her get into her seat, along with some help from the staff. Again, it took a little bit of patience, but eventually we were able to get her out of the wheelchair and all the way into my car. She struggled to get settled in, and I empathized with her, knowing just how vulnerable she must have been feeling at that moment. With her fragile condition in mind, I pulled the car out of the parking lot and carefully navigated my way through the hospital complex and eventually made it onto the local highway. I stayed in the slow lane and I did my best to avoid any bumps in the road because every little jostle of the car seemed to cause a painful reaction for Mom. This experience was a sober reminder of the car ride home after my first session of chemotherapy. My whole body felt bloated, and I was fighting incredibly hard not to throw up. Every bounce or shake of the car would be another opportunity for me to lose control. It must have been a wonderful feeling for Mom as we rolled down the street and we saw her house before us. I could easily relate to the feeling of wanting to be home so badly and in a safe and comfortable place after such a long and traumatic hospital stay. Our plan was to stop briefly at her house and grab a few things before heading back to my house, and that is where she could recover in peace and quiet, with me ready to help her at a moment's notice. After pulling into the driveway and bringing the car to a stop, we gave each other a relieved smile. It was a significant achievement in and of itself to get her out of the hospital. After I walked around and opened the car door for her, I stood up tall and strong so that Mom could use me to pull herself up and out of the car. Once she emerged, I watched her take a nice deep breath and look around, trying to get her bearings and trying to take in the sweetness of the home that she loved. Mom placed her arm around my arm, and we shuffled ever so slowly towards the backyard so we could survey the property. Along the way, Mom made sure to tell me the backstory and plan she had for every object that we passed, and I found that amusing. She was inching back towards being herself again, ever ambitious for what needed to be done around the yard and leaving no stone unturned, with that excellent eye for detail. Mom was incredulous at how large one of her squash plants had grown. It was, in fact, 2 or 3 times larger than what I was used to seeing. And to my absolute dismay, she insisted on bending over to examine it, and then she stood back up quickly. Given how fragile she was, I told her that I was worried about her bending over and falling, and she told me that nothing was going to keep her from enjoying her garden. Once we finished the tour of the gardens, she agreed to sit down in a chair and rest for a little bit. And I swear, she must have been running on adrenaline from being home for the first time in a while, because as soon as she sat down, I could see that she had overexerted herself. In response, I went to grab her a glass of water, and then I took care of a few tasks that she had asked me to do around the house. Getting her back into the car was just as challenging as it had been at the hospital. And then we set off for my house with a sense of accomplishment about us. Mom remarked that going home and checking in on everything made her feel a lot better. And she told me that she would now be able to commit herself to the recovery process without worrying about her garden or having to do things around the house. When we got to my place, my wife and I helped her out of the car and through the front door, and then to the spare bedroom where we had set up that recovery bed for her. Right away, we ran into a problem: the height from the floor to the bed. It was far too high for Mom to get up on with the abdominal pain that she was having, so we had to come up with a creative solution. We grabbed a step stool for her to step on first, and then a chair from the kitchen to give her something a little bit higher to push off on. And then eventually, we were finally able to get her able to slide onto that bed. Stepping back and watching Mom as she settled in against a pile of pillows and took another deep breath, I was reminded of how I felt after my first day of chemotherapy, physically and emotionally exhausted, but happy to be at home resting. Next, she took some pain medication for her abdomen, and then I sat to talk with her about how she was feeling. She said she was overwhelmed, and I reminded her again that she was doing a great job. She was now safe at home with me, and I was going to take great care of her. I also reminded her that I had nowhere else to be than beside her, and I hoped that my pledge would give her comfort. Studying her body language, I sensed that she must have been feeling quite vulnerable back at my place after 8 days in the hospital with doctors and nurses waiting on her hand and foot. Later that evening, when she needed to go to the bathroom, Mom called me over to help her get up out of bed. As she attempted to pull herself up to a sitting position, she let out a shriek of pain and remarked that every little movement hurt. And I told her just how much her situation reminded me of the day after my ACL surgery, when getting out of the bed and going to the bathroom was unbelievably painful. I also told her that her situation reminded me of my first day home after chemotherapy, when I felt so bloated and nauseous that I could not even lift my head off of the pillow, let alone make it all the way to the bathroom. I wanted to show her as much compassion as I could, and I told her that she was going through a tough time. After carefully escorting her to the bathroom and then back again, we used the stool and the chair to help her get back up on the bed. It took nearly 10 minutes because every time she moved even a little bit, the pain was so much that we had to stop and allow her to catch her breath. Once she was finally resting comfortably, it was time for her to take some more pain medication and go to bed. She was badly in need of some sleep after such a long day. As Mom dozed off, I sat at my computer, working late into the night and occasionally turning around to look at her lovingly, just thrilled to have her safe and sound with me at home. I spent the next couple of days taking care of Mom, and I was encouraged to see her gradually gaining back her strength and mobility. By the 4th day with me at home, she seemed to be doing a lot better. She was now able to get in and out of bed a lot faster, although she still needed help with the task, and her spirits were clearly improved as well, and she often talked about how impressed she was with the way the hospital had handled her case. She told me that almost every staff member there was kind to her, seemed competent, and for the most part had an excellent attention to detail. This time that Mom and I were spending together was really healthy for both of us. We continued to talk about her feelings as a new cancer patient and my feelings as a new cancer caregiver. As day 5 began, Mom reported that she was not feeling well, and that was surprising given that she had made significant strides in her recovery the last few days. Thinking back to my own experience recovering from chemotherapy, I told her that I would often have 2 days of progress followed by a day of setbacks. 2 steps forward and 1 step back, so to speak. And I think this helped frame things for Mom. I again reminded her that I was proud of her and I was impressed with how much progress she had already made. And to help add some context, I reminded Mom that the surgeon had to make a rather large abdominal cut to remove that tumor from her colon, and it was only natural that her body would need some more time to recover. Mom was feeling better the following day, much better, so we took another trip back to her house to tour the gardens once again and to take care of a few more errands. It was great to see her get out of the car without any help and to be able to walk around and water the gardens so freely. Slowly but surely, she picked tomatoes off the vine and plucked green beans off the stalk, joyfully putting them in a plastic bag to give to her neighbor across the street. It was wonderful to be there with her and to see that she was feeling much better and was well on the path to recovery. That gave me confidence that she would be strong enough to face whatever came next. Next chapter will be right back where I started. This is my Battles with Cancer, a candid patient and caregiver's memoir. I am a cancer survivor. I was a cancer patient and a cancer caregiver for my mother who had cancer. I wrote about my book to help myself and to help other people. And I'm now doing it for free on YouTube. I'm reading the entire book, one chapter at a time for free on YouTube. You can also, of course, get it on Amazon, along with my other two books, Trading Quotes and Trading Wisdom. I am, of course, Big Cheds on Twitter and Cheds Trading on YouTube. Folks, thank you so much. And I will be back with another chapter soon. Take care.